The Vethani examiner was already running behind schedule when he reached my pen. I knew that because he told me so, 3 times, in the first 90 seconds of our acquaintance. His name was Catalogued, Senior Certifier, Biological Threat Assessment, 3rd Clade of the Harveth Board, and he had a tone that suggested he'd been told he was important for long enough that he'd stopped needing other people to confirm it. He was roughly 2 meters of blue chitinous shell, 4 arms, 2 of them clutching an assessment slate and a scanning wand, 2 of them gesturing at a schedule overlay only he could see. His eyes were compound facete and amber gold, and they moved fast, cataloguing, discarding, moving on. He catalogued me in about half a second and discarded me just as quickly. That was fine. Getting catalogued and discarded is most of the job. Sergeant Mowen, he said. His translator rendered it flat and correct. Your unit's consignment is the final intake under Certification Batch 11004. I require access to the primary holding pen. I require your animals still and compliant. I require completion within the hour. The board has 17 additional depots to clear before the Harveth window closes. Understood, I said. I didn't add anything. There wasn't anything to add. I'd been managing Earth fauna transfers at this depot for 14 months, and I'd watched the Vethani board clear 9 prior batches: sheep, cattle, a consignment of working dogs, 2 quarantine wards of draft mules. They were thorough and they were fast, and they did not enjoy being talked to while they worked. Catalogued had the clipboard certainty of a man who had cleared 10,986 species without incident, and he expected to clear 14 more before sundown, and draft horses were on his list as large terrestrial ungulates, non-predatory, herbivorous, low neural complexity, category null threat profile. I had read the pre-cert brief. Category null was the board's lowest classification. It meant the examiner wouldn't even need his wand at full range. He'd take a passive biometric sweep from the fence line, log the herd profile, and be done in 20 minutes. I opened the gate to the primary pen and stepped back. The pen held 6 animals. 5 mares on the east side, in a loose cluster near the water trough. And then Drum. Drum was our lead stallion. 17 hands and 4 inches at the shoulder. 1,200 kilos of Percheron draft cross, grey going to white along the barrel, with a head the size of a small engine block and a set of dark eyes that had, in 14 months, expressed exactly 2 moods: mild interest and complete indifference. He was standing in the center of the pen. He wasn't doing anything. He was simply occupying the center of the pen the way a continent occupies a map, by being too large to work around and showing no inclination to move. Catalogued looked at him. Drum didn't look back. Drum was examining something on the ground near his left front hoof. A pebble, possibly. Or nothing. It was sometimes hard to tell with Drum. The passive sweep radius, Catalogued said, requires the subject to be within 6 body lengths of the fence line. Yes, I said. The large one is approximately 9 body lengths from the nearest fence line. Yes, I said. A pause. Sergeant Mowen, please move the large one to the fence. I looked at Drum. Drum had located the pebble. He was not going to do anything with it. He was just going to know it was there. Sir, I said, I can ask him. Catalogued's mandibles moved in a way that I'd learned, over 14 months, meant that he thought the person he was talking to was wasting his time. It is a large ungulate, he said. It has no faculty for language processing. You cannot ask it. I know, I said, but I can ask in his direction. After that it's his call. I walked to the fence. I said, Drum, Inspector needs you over here. Drum lifted his head. He looked at me with the mild interest expression. Then he put his head back down. He heard me, I said. He's thinking about it. Catalogued made the mandible motion again, faster this time. He pulled up his assessment slate and made a notation. Then he stepped through the gate and into the pen. This was the first mistake. Not a dangerous one. Drum was not aggressive. He had never, in 14 months, bitten anyone, kicked anyone, or done anything that the manual would classify as a threat behavior. He had simply, on 17 documented occasions, declined to go somewhere he'd decided not to go, and there was nothing in the manual that adequately described what it was like to be on the other end of that decision, because the manual had been written by people who believed that a large enough push would always produce a proportionate movement, and Drum had not read the manual. Catalogued walked toward Drum with the scanning wand extended and his slate recording. He was moving efficiently. He had done this 10,986 times. He knew how to approach an animal for a passive biometric scan. He got within 3 body lengths of Drum and extended the wand to its full operational reach. Drum looked at the wand. Then Drum looked at Cathoriel. Then Drum took 1 step sideways. It was a precise and unhurried step. He moved exactly far enough that the wand's operational radius no longer covered him, and then he stopped. He put his head down again. He resumed examining the ground. Cathoriel moved with him. Drum moved again. Same direction, same unhurried precision. Same result, the wand's radius not covered. I watched this from the fence. I had a feed bucket in one hand and I was not doing anything with it, because there was nothing to do. Cathoriel stopped. He made a notation on his slate. Then he increased the wand's power setting and walked around to Drum's left side, attempting to approach from an angle that would put the animal between the wand and the fence. It was a logical approach. In theory, Drum's range of lateral motion would be constrained by the fence on one side and the examiner's radius on the other. Drum walked forward. Not fast. He walked forward at a draft horse's pace, which is deliberate and absolute, and Cathoriel had to step back or be walked into, and Drum came to rest 6 inches from the fence on the north side, which put him precisely as far from the assessment wand's extended radius as he'd been in the center of the pen. Cathoriel stood behind him, holding his wand, and did not say anything for a moment. I said, "He does that." "What does he do?" "He stays just out of reach of things he's not interested in," I said. "He doesn't get agitated about it. He just stays out of reach." Another pause. Cathoriel consulted his slate. "Sergeant Mowen," he said, "this animal's category null classification requires a confirmed biometric scan at 3 body lengths or closer. I cannot certify the consignment without it." "I understand," I said. "I need you to secure the animal so that I can complete the scan." "I can try," I said. I walked into the pen. I walked up to Drum, who raised his head and looked at me with a mild interest expression. I put my hand on his neck. He leaned into it slightly, the way he always did, because Drum liked contact and was not opposed to people in any general sense. He simply had a view about the scanning wand, and his view was that he would not be within its radius, and that was the end of the matter as far as he was concerned. "Drum," I said, "I need you to hold still for a minute." Drum exhaled. It was a large, warm exhale. He put his nose down and touched the top of my head with it, which he sometimes did, which I had never been able to explain to anyone. Then he walked to the left. My hand left his neck. He stopped 2 steps away, facing north, and was still again. I looked at Cathoriel. Cathoriel looked at his slate. I could see the amber-gold facets of his eyes cycling through what I recognized, by now, as the expression of a being performing an internal cost-benefit analysis and not liking either side of the ledger. He made a call. A secondary assessment team arrived 11 minutes later, 3 additional Vethani technicians with a portable scan array, which was the equipment they used for large or problematic fauna, rated for subjects with evasive behavior profiles. Cathoriel briefed them at the gate. They entered the pen with the array's arms extended, establishing a coverage radius of roughly 12 body lengths. Drum would need to cover a significant distance quickly to exit that radius. Drum walked to the northeast corner of the pen. The coverage radius was 14 body lengths. Drum was in the southwest corner when they arrived. The northeast corner was 15.5 body lengths from the center of the array. The Vethani technician on the left rechecked her equipment. She rechecked it again. She said something in Vethani to Cathoriel that the translator rendered as the subject is outside the extended array perimeter. I was sitting on the top fence rail by this point. I had opened the feed bucket and given myself a ration bar from my pocket, because it was nearly noon and I wasn't going anywhere. Cathoriel noted the time on his slate. He was 2.5 hours behind schedule. He looked at me. "Sergeant Mowen," he said, "is there any methodology by which this animal can be made to submit to scanning?" "Not that I've found," I said. "You are telling me that a non-predatory herbivore with category null neural complexity is successfully evading a full Vethani certification array." "I wouldn't say evading," I said. "Drum's not doing anything strategic. He's just not going where he doesn't want to go. He's been like that since we got him. We had a farrier try to trim his hooves for 6 weeks before she figured out you have to let him decide when." I took a bite of the ration bar. He decided eventually. He's not opposed to things. He just has a schedule. Cathoriel looked at Drum. Drum looked back at Cathoriel. It was the first time I'd seen Drum look at the inspector directly, and it lasted about 2 seconds, and then Drum went back to examining the northeast corner of the pen with the same mild attentiveness he'd given the pebble. The secondary assessment team packed up their array and left without looking at me. Cathoriel spent a further 40 minutes attempting 3 additional approaches. He repositioned the portable array twice. He obtained a physical tethering rig from his equipment case, standard issue for large terrestrial fauna with evasive behavior, and I did not tell him not to use it, because he had authority in his certification role and I had no grounds to countermand him, and also because I was curious how Drum would respond. Drum responded by standing next to the tethering post and then, once the rig was extended toward him, moving to a distance of approximately 1 rig length and a half, and remaining there, calmly, with complete indifference to the time. Cathoriel filed his daily report at 17 minutes past the Harveth Reach window close. Drum's consignment was logged as pending certification, subject non-compliant, assessment deferred. The 17 additional depots did not get cleared that day. I put Drum's herd back on feed schedule and wrote up the incident in the same tone I used for equipment maintenance logs, because that was the tone it seemed to call for. The Vethani Certification Board sent a formal query to the Earth Integrated Fauna Corps 3 days later, requesting documentation on Percheron draft cross behavioral parameters. I forwarded the relevant passages from the husbandry manual, which did not say anything useful about what Drum had done, because the manual covered what draft horses could be trained to do, not what they chose not to do, and no one had thought to write the second manual. A follow-up query arrived 4 days after that, this time from the board's threat assessment division rather than the standard certification office. They wanted the full 14-month behavioral log, every recorded incident, every documented deviation from expected compliance. I sent it. The file ran to 61 pages, mostly because my predecessor had been thorough, and because the farrier, her name was Corporal Yassin, she had since rotated out, had written up her 6 weeks of hoof trim attempts in the kind of detail that suggested she had found the experience philosophically clarifying. The last entry in her section read, "Subject permitted trimming on day 41. No change in environment or approach methodology. Subject simply decided today was acceptable. No further incidents." The Threat Assessment Division requested a video deposition. I told them I didn't have video, which was true. We weren't a high documentation posting, but I offered to send still photographs. They accepted. I sent 12. 11 of them showed Drum standing. 1 showed him drinking. None of them showed anything that would explain anything, which was, I supposed, the point. 6 weeks after that, the board issued an amended procedural addendum. Earth draft horses, all breeds, all crosses, were reclassified from large terrestrial ungulates, non-predatory, herbivorous, low neural complexity, category null threat profile to class sovereign threshold organisms, certification methodology pending specialist consultation. I received a copy. I read it once. I filed it in the tab I use for feed orders and hay resupply, because that's where things go that are about Drum. He was standing in the center of the pen when I went to check the water trough that afternoon. Standing the way he always stood, occupying space with the particular settled authority of something that has never once needed to convince anyone of anything. I topped off the trough. He came over and drank. He put his nose on my shoulder on the way back, the way he sometimes did. I walked back to the office and started on the next day's intake forms. There were 12 more Earth species queued for certification behind him. The board had sent 3 additional inspectors. I didn't tell them about the schedule.